Call this meeting of the Anderson School District 3 Board of Trustees to order. Mr. Holbrook.
Let us pray. Our gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you this night, dear Lord, we can come, dear Lord, and just conduct business in this district, dear Lord. Dear Lord, just give us the wisdom and give us the knowledge that we need, dear Lord, to lead this district in the right way. Dear Lord, we just ask you for our country, dear Lord, just give us a cure for this virus, dear Lord, and just be with every family and protect them and keep them safe, dear Lord, and just help us all. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 All right, if you would join me with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, first thing we need to do is to approve the agenda. Got any changes or anything that needs to be made?
No changes.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion, we approve the agenda.
I have a motion by Mr. Boltnight. Second by Mr. Owens. All in favor of approval of the agenda, raise your right hand. Unanimous. All right, I trust that each of you had time to read over the minutes of the last meeting. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections that need to be made at this time?
We accept the minutes as presented.
We have a motion by Mr. Owens to accept the minutes as written.
Second.
Second by Mr. Holbrook. All in favor, raise your right hand. All right, next thing on our agenda. We have an action item that needs to be taken care of, consideration of a bond resolution. This is one that we were going to do last month, but the county board was not able to secure a meeting for that for us, so it wasn't ready. And I'm gonna turn it over to Mr. Moore, let him kind of explain this bond. We pretty much know it, but.
Yes, sir. We discussed it back in March where we passed the reimbursement resolution. We'll revisit some of the details of it. It's a $1.5 million bond to be repaid over 4 years. It was already part of the funding program, so it's something that's built in, so there will be no need for any tax increase for this. We just finished off paying our last cycle of it, so it's time for us to renew this offering. So of the $1.5 million, approximately $1.3 million is to go towards technology equipment, such as our one-to-one devices, employee devices, interactive flat panels for schools, things of that nature. So that's the majority of it. And then the remaining about $200,000 or so will go to replacing an activity bus. We have some buses that are coming up for replacement in the next couple of years. So we want to set aside funding to at least cover the cost of one of those, and then the rest for lawn maintenance equipment. We're making an investment in our athletic facilities at the high school, so we want to make sure we have the equipment to be able to keep that as good as we'd like. So that's the gist of it. It is a general obligation bond, so it does count against 8% debt limit. We have about $2 million of debt capacity that we can borrow against. So we have the room to do that, and that option provides us the most flexibility in the spending and the offering going forward. Does anyone have any questions about the resolution and offering itself?
Okay, what questions anybody have?
Nothing has changed. I mean, it's pretty much all the same information's already been presented.
Right.
Last 2 previous meetings, right?
That's correct. Nothing's changed.
All right, entertain a motion.
Make a motion.
Have a motion by Mr. Holbrook to approve the resolution for $1.5 million obligation bond.
Second.
Second by Mr. Boltnight. All right, any discussion? All right, hear none, we'll go ahead and vote. All in favor of the resolution, raise your right hand. It's unanimous. All right, this time we move to our business report. Mr. Matthew Moore will present our financial report, general fund update.
So through the month of April, our revenues have exceeded our expenditures by about $975,000. That's about where we expect to be at this point in time, considering how we budgeted. Our expenditure percentages are trending right along with where they have in the past few years. In the past few years, we finished strong, so that it kind of gives us the direction that we're heading like we should be, and hopefully we'll finish strong like we have the past few years. If you don't mind scrolling down, Amy, to the next page. So, as you can see, just the past couple of years, we're at $1.3 million and then $1,150,000 roughly 2 years ago at this point. So, us going from budgeting, putting in fund balance the past 2 years, and then budgeting to take out fund balance this year, so we're about where we need to land. So we're anywhere from $175,000 to $425,000 behind April's in the past years. And one thing to keep in mind, just last year, we finished, if you don't mind going to the last page, Amy. We finished the year at $150,000, and keep in mind that number, in reality, was higher, but we were able to decide to use that as a retention supplement for those folks that weren't able to get the 4% cost of living increase. So that kind of gives us a little more encouragement that maybe we won't finish, if not as far into the red as we had budgeted for. So that's another kind of glimmer of hope for us as we wrap up the year. With everything going on, we are expecting to see some savings in the utility costs, not having as people in the buildings as much. We haven't gotten all the invoices in for all the utilities. We've gotten some from the electric companies, and that's been anywhere from $5,000 to $6,000 roughly district-wide. If we look at April's usage last year to this year. So if you kind of spread that out to some of the other utilities, maybe anywhere $7,000 to $9,000 savings per month, just from utilities. So that's an area that they'll help us out. So that'll actually help us out for maybe 2 months this year since we're on a cash basis, and then maybe for a month or so into the new fiscal year as well. Another area where we think we'll see some savings, we do expect to see some savings from AIT, but we haven't been able to have the face-to-face meeting with the other districts like we would have had at this point had we been under normal circumstances. So the dollar amount, I can't tell you, but I do expect to see some savings that would ideally help us out on the expenditure side as well from AIT. So we're kind of where we thought we'd be, and there's hope that financially we might be able to improve our situation over the last couple of months. If all goes well.
All right.
Any questions on general fund?
Anybody have any questions?
And then the next part is the sales tax. Really not a whole lot to report. We had a collection of $153,000 in April. See about 5%, roughly 5% growth countywide and for the district. So the impact of the virus hadn't quite shown up here yet since that's February collection. So really next month and the following month we can start giving us a clear picture of what kind of hit we're going to take. We're expecting a pretty sizable hit for the next few months. So in the meantime, we've ceased all sales tax spending unless Ms. Hip deems it necessary. Right now, the only thing we've got going on is maybe some plumbing issues to fix over the Star Elementary School. Something that we feel needs to be done, but outside of that, we have little to nothing going on with sales tax dollars until we get a true grasp on what kind of impact we're going to see and how it's going to affect us going forward. But the collection in April was right along where we expected it to be at this time. Any questions on the sales tax? Last thing, I've given you all a copy of this page, which gives you the line by line item of what our proposed budget looks like. And I'll go through it, and if you don't mind pulling up the PowerPoint, I'll go through it in this PowerPoint to kind of give you kind of the overviews of what our assumptions were and what went into this budget and really the main changes were. So we started, so basically, we're going to operate with the assumption that the House and the Senate will get together and agree on something for Santee Cooper and pass a continuing resolution where we will continue receiving the current funding we're receiving now to start next fiscal year. With that, they are going to freeze the statewide teacher salary schedule, suspend the step increase, and suspend the 1% employer retirement increase. Those things we had initially talked about being in the budget that right now are going to be suspended. Right now, the plan is for them to reconvene in the middle of September, and that's where they'll consider passing the budget in the middle of the year. Some districts have taken the approach of, or consider taking the approach of just passing a continuing resolution to just mirror what the state's doing, and then come September, October, just basically pass that budget then. We're recommending that we go ahead and pass the budget now with the best numbers we have now, and then with the disclaimer that we will amend it once it gets passed. Going that route gives us the flexibility with millage. If you just do a continuing resolution, the timing of it just is not allow you to do anything. If you wanted to raise the millage, they're possibly passing the state budget in September. Tax bills get mailed out the first couple of weeks in October. So the process of steps you have to take will leave you almost no time to do that. So that's why we're recommending just go ahead and pass the budget now with the best information we have, and that will give us an opportunity to go ahead and update our staff and things like that. One of the things that we talked about that I've seen no mention of them taking out right now is the health insurance increase that's supposed to go into effect January 1st. So this, what I've given you, does reflect the health insurance increase for beginning in January. What we did it for 7/12, so basically 7 months worth of health insurance increase for next year, just to kind of give us a little bit of buffer if we have any changes come the new year. So we have that, and that's roughly $90,000 increase for us there. So that could change from now to June, but I haven't seen any record of that coming out with this continuing resolution. And so I would imagine that will come back in once the budget is passed. Really, the only other changes, the only other significant changes I would say that we have in front of you compared to the previous year's budget is I updated the revenues with what we're actually receiving compared to what we budgeted to receive last year. So we see about an increase of $106,000 of state revenue there. And that's just to make it trued up to what we're collecting at this point in time, and to better reflect our current enrollment. And then on the expenditure side, the bulk of it is just updating our current staffing situation going into next year. So with those two updates in there, along with the health insurance increase, right now is budgeting having to take out $348,580 of fund balance with those updates. And in this proposed budget, we're asking for the maximum millage increase of 2.02%, which for us is 3.6 mils. The 2.02% consists of 1.81 statewide growth in CPI and 0.21% growth here in our local area. The value of the mill has gone down just slightly for us, down to $28,081, and that's as of the end of April's assessments that we got from the county. That might be a little low because they had a change in how they bill boats and boat motors starting this year. So I had to kind of put an estimate in there. It might be a little low. So we've been right around 28,200 last year where we budgeted. So it's down just slightly. So with 3.6 mils at $28,000 a mil, it's an additional funding of just over $100,000. So the reason we think we'll need this, one of the reasons, is that we believe that when they come back in September and pass a budget, the first thing that we're we believe they'll put in place is the step increase. For the past several years, the step increase has not been funded. So we feel like this is the best way to at least offset that impending cost. And not to mention, we're already almost $350,000 into the fund balance as it sits right now. So that's a part of what I have in front of you as well. Go on. And outside of the payroll costs, you see the purchase services, supplies, equipment, and other objects, those changes. They ended up netting out to about $28,000 of reduction to the budget, but just kind of going through them line by line, we were able to reduce purchase services just from the SRO funding we received this year. We're expecting to receive next year, and that's offset a little bit by we got new radio devices for our bus drivers that we felt was a lot safer for those drivers, and that's just the annual maintenance cost for that. And then we saw a significant increase in the Tri-County enrollment for our students in the high school, at least in the fall semester we did. So that was an area we need to increase. And then we increased supplies and decreased the equipment for approximately the same amount, just to better reflect our capitalization thresholds, where we're classifying any items less than $5,000 as a supply, anything above it as equipment expenditure. And the bulk of our equipment expenditure is coming through the penny sales tax. So we're just trying to better reflect how we're actually spending it. And then we just had some rounding from some budgets there. And then the last one, we just had an increase in our WePay dues. Our consortium that we meet with, various groups meet with across the district monthly down in Greenwood. So had an increase in those dues as well. So all of those changes net up to about $28,500 roughly in a reduction to the budget. Last slide. So as things sit, this is kind of how our fund balance percentage has gone in the past. We finished this past year at 23.45% after the audit. So if the current year we're budgeted $184,760 to take out of fund balance, if we hit that on the nose, we'll finish at 21.16%. And then if, as the budget sits, if we hit that on the nose at $348,580, that'll drop us down to 19.26%. It's not a direction we want to head, and we're working to reduce this number that I have highlighted on your page. Some areas we're really hard at is staffing and trying to maximizing other funding options to hopefully minimize that number. And we have some other, I guess, positions or changes we're looking at over the next month or so that we hope that we'll have a better looking number to come back to you in June. But right now, with the staff we have and the moves that have occurred, this is where we're at. Another thing I wanted to mention too is for the reason why some of the salaries and fringe numbers may be a little higher, we've been very conservative on vacant. When I put in a vacancy, if we have, say, a teacher leaving, the vacancy we have in place until we know who the replacement is, have been very conservative. I've been putting it as a higher paying position with higher cost of health insurance, higher cost of benefits for those positions, just to be conservative, so that when we do get the information, the hope is that we'll only improve our situations financially once those folks come in and sign up for benefits and things like that. So try to be conservative on the front end for that, so that we don't get caught by any surprises. So the hope is as we get to fill in our new incoming teachers, incoming replacement for staff, that numbers will improve there as well. That's all. You guys have any particular questions about any of this that you see on the sheet?
The millage increase, have we increased that last 2 years?
Yeah.
To max already?
Yes, sir.
What would we look like if we only asked for half that increase? We're looking at a $50,000 difference, basically.
Yes, sir.
All right, anybody else have any questions? Okay, appreciate it, Mr. Moore.
Sir.
Back to our agenda. We'll have the superintendent's report, and over to Ms. Kathy Hill.
Okay, first thing on my report is just our summer hours. Typically in the summer, the past several years, our summer hours have been 8 to 4 with a 30-minute lunch and closed on Fridays. So that's what I would like to continue if everybody's in agreement with that. Of course, the caveat with that is with all of our staff, we work as long as we need to get the job done. And sometimes with timing in the summer, the way things come in, that's a good schedule because you tend to may have a slow 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks of July, and then the rest of it is just constant. And so it kind of allows that leeway for busier times because of information coming in. And so that would not start until after that week after June 4th when our true summer begins. Okay, I just want to give you a little update on COVID-19. I call it school impact, and in the appendix item, I've given you some closeout information that I won't go through step by step, but a couple things in the last governor's order that we got was have a graduation ceremony to honor them as much as possible, and I hope you were able to see what Mr. Roberts and I put out last week about graduation. I think we've come together with a very good plan for graduation. And at the direction of the state superintendent right now, we've said two tickets per family. We're hoping by June 11th that number is increased. And we actually already have a plan in place to increase that number. So, but we started with that number based on the state superintendent's recommendation. But we're constantly revisiting that. As a part of our plan, we're having masks made with CPAWs on them. That will be the ticket in for anyone coming in. And that way we can require the crowd to wear a mask. We'll talk about whether or not graduates have to wear a mask. I want to talk to the high school about that, but I think for photo ops, parents would probably prefer they don't have on masks when they walk across the stage. But how they come in and socially distance before and after graduation, it may be good to have that. They had a great Be the Light parade Saturday night. Looked like parents and students and staff really enjoyed that, and that was a great way to bring them back to school. They're delivering care packages to seniors this week, and I think our seniors are going to be very excited. The high school has really done a great job recognizing seniors, and I think in the next month, as that plan unfolds, you will see the extent they've gone to recognize them. As part of the impact, we've been told that, especially the last 2 weeks, but really anytime now, we can bring in small groups of students, and toward the end of the month, larger groups of students for any type of locker clean out, textbook return. If a teacher needs to meet with a small group of students to make sure that they've done everything they need to do for this time period before school closes, we have the latitude to do that. And so each school kind of has a plan of how they're going to roll that out. One thing I ask each school to do is to make sure that they've had some type of parent contact with every child before school closes. I called it a conference, whether it's face-to-face, on the phone, through Google Meets, some type of interaction with every parent so that we know where children are going into the summer and as we close out school. Some of our programs summer programs are having to be adjusted due to this. Right now, we don't know how summer training for athletics will be. We expect a decision on that by June 1st. And when I talk about summer training, you know, athletes come in and they work out and they have some passing clinics for football and different sports. And at this time, students cannot even come into the weight room and work out together. And I know there's a lot of discussion on that statewide. And I see both sides of it. I mean, one concern, especially with football, is if students are not allowed to work out to the extent that they normally work out, what impact is that going to be on injuries when we get to football season? Because we know the stronger they are, the less likely they are to get injured in a game. So a lot of that's being fleshed out, and we'll know June 1 what that looks like. We typically have a STEAM camp in the summer, the first few weeks of June. We've postponed that, or actually canceled that for this year, and you may remember that Bosch gave us a big check for that. Bosch has given us permission to hold that money, to use it for next year in however way we need to. Our summer reading camps and extended school years for some of our early childhood students, right now that will be in some form in late July. And typically that's a program that runs in June. So you see some changes to scheduling for the summer based on COVID and based on the most current information from our state superintendent and governor. Another thing, and this is, we were supposed to implement the new social studies standards this next school year, but because of COVID-19 and the projected impact on funding, they're not going to even procure those textbooks. And so right now we have the option to stay with the old standards for another year or move on to the new standards if we feel like we can do it without the textbook. And that's one of the things we're looking at in the district. And so we'll keep you updated on that. You may have heard some about the CARES Act and the funding to districts. We're slotted to get about $900,000 of CARES Act funding. Now, we haven't got the application for that yet or anything, and you may, if you read about it, they talk about 12 buckets that we can write for with that funding, and we'll look at how to do that. You know, our ideal situation is we would spend a lot of that money on Chromebooks to help us get ahead, but also because we're allowing students to keep them during the summer, and Amy's researched it, and in most districts that allow them to keep them over the summer, there's about a 2% loss rate, which for us is 46 to 50 Chromebooks that we would look at maybe even having to replace. But we feel like the benefits to allowing students to keep the Chromebooks far outweigh the problems with it. So another area we'll definitely hold back some money for on the front end is because taxes are going to be affected, tax collections, and so we want to be prepared in the new budget in case there's some type of budget cut that we need some of that money just to not have to make the extreme cuts. If you remember 10 years ago or so, when we had such a budget deficit and the district had to do extreme things to make salaries match and things like that, we want to have some of that money on hand so that we protect our staff in any type of budget cut. Because I remember the furloughs. I'm sure you remember the furloughs and the things that had to be done, and we don't want to have to go to a situation like that again if at all possible. And then the other is some of the online learning platforms we use. That's a third area. We would possibly use some of that CARES Act money if everything else stays positive for us. So as we write for that and as money flows, of course, we'll keep you updated on how we are utilizing that. But that is one thing that at least we hope we will have to help offset some expenses during this time. So that's just a kind of overview of the impact. And I did want to just mention the graduation date, June 11th at 10 a.m. at New Spring Church. One of the things I did talk about in the video that we gave too is there was a lot of talk about the stadium, but New Springs, a real talking point to that was the type of live stream we could do at New Spring, the type of atmosphere. Students talk about walking across the stage, and the auditorium size at New Spring, their main auditorium holds more than our football stadium on both sides. And so we do feel like that is a great venue for our graduation. New Spring is not charging for the venue either, which I thought was outstanding. Now, we will pay security, we will pay cleanup, but we're not paying a venue cost like we had to pay Clemson on the front end. And so I think it's their way of also giving back to the community. So I think we can have a great graduation for our seniors. And as I say, my hopes in June is that we can offer more than 2 tickets. I'm confident that we can. Okay? The next thing on here is the appendix items, and I won't go through all these for you, but I did want to list them just to point them out. Our risk assessment, again, and that just basically talks about our business operations and things like that, is at a 9, which is very low risk, which tells you that all of our areas are doing a great job managing the business of the district. We did give some personal protective equipment to AmMed Health, and there's a letter about that in that information. Santee Cooper did come, with everything going on with Santee Cooper, we still managed to get our $20,000 in scholarship money for our seniors. So that's something the past 2 years, we haven't known for sure that that money was coming through, but that $20,000 goes to that Santee Cooper scholarship, and some of the senior awards have money attached to it. So, and then like I said, there's a pretty detailed calendar of what each school is doing to close out school. So if you have any questions, that you have a general calendar for elementary, middle, and high with basically the month of May through June the 4th.
All right. Does anybody have any questions about any of this material that you received Wednesday? All right, hearing none, we do have a personnel matter that needs to be addressed in executive session. And we have a motion by Mr. Danny Owens to enter into executive session on the personnel matter.
Second.
Second by Mr. Balknight. All in favor, raise your right hand. It is unanimous.
Amy, don't shut it down yet. We need for him to sign the bond resolution.
Since our notary is not on site.
But she's watching.
You have the orange tabs. You just have one signature on yours. That's it. Thank you, sir.
Okay?